Welcome to a special episode of the Skift Travel Podcast. Today we have David Neeleman, founder of JetBlue and Breeze Airways, on the pod. The evening before we recorded this episode, American Eagle Flight 5342 crashed in Washington, D.C. At the time of this recording, details about the accident were still coming in. We had a wide-ranging conversation with David about airline safety, low-cost business models, sustainability, and the future of aviation. Our condolences to the families and loved ones of everyone affected by this tragedy. Welcome back to the Skift Travel Podcast. I'm Skift's editor-in-chief, Sarah Kopit, joined as always by Skift's head of research, Seth Borko. Hey, Seth, how you doing?
Hey, Sarah, I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks. So today we're joined by David Neeleman, founder of JetBlue and Breeze Airways. David, it's been a bit of a rough morning, but how are you doing today?
We're doing okay. You know, it's just a stark reminder that this is a fragile time. You know, fragile industry, and things could happen quickly. But you know, it does cause you to reflect. But also, if you think about it, it's been 15 years since Colgan Air, almost 15 years. And we have a relatively young workforce, and a lot of our folks are struggling, obviously. But it's the first time it's ever happened, you know, to a lot of our people. I was just talking to our chief commercial officer, Lucas Johnson. He said he just barely started in the industry. He's a seasoned veteran, but he just started right after the Colgan Air thing. So, you know, it's something we'll have to go through, but it's, I think Americans doing a great job in handling such a devastating thing. Robert Isom is doing a great job. So, and we've obviously, as an industry, are circled around, you know, offering our support and whatever we can do. So, and I think we'll just take a look at our readiness and make sure that we're always prepared and look to see what we can learn from American.
Yeah, I was curious to kind of pick your brain a bit with, you know, drones being in the air. That's kind of been in the news a lot lately, especially around the New York tri-state area, eVTOLs. You know, the airspace is just getting more and more crowded and more populated with even new types of technologies. Do you think the airspace around DC and other metro areas really is too crowded, and that we'll have to see kind of a very basic retooling of the infrastructure?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the sky is limitless, and there's a lot of places. And technology, I don't think, you know, obviously there's technology that we're not fully utilizing that needs to be implemented. And I think, you know, I'm looking forward to seeing who the new FAA administrator is to move quicker on some of these technological things. You know, but I have questions about, you know, helicopters being able to go across the flight path at that same altitude. When the planes are coming at the same altitude, I'm not sure why that has to happen. So I'm sure that maybe it's because the helicopters, and we've all been to D.C. and watched those Sikorskys go up the Potomac constantly, and maybe they can figure out a way. I'm sure it's because they don't want them flying over buildings for safety reasons. And so maybe there's a way that airplanes and these helicopters can coexist in the D.C. area. You know, we talk about Swiss cheese, that you have to line up all the holes, and that's what happened. So we need to close one of those holes, obviously, in the future, and I'm sure smarter people than me will figure all that out to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
One of the things I have a ton of respect for, and that I think the aviation industry leads in, is in, you know, in safety, certainly safety, but also in open and detailed investigations, and in you know, really doing a full finding of fact often and not a fault. And that's something that I've always found really impressive about how the airline and the aviation industry works.
Yeah, I mean, it couldn't be in a more magnified spot than DC, obviously. So, you know, it's not in some small city somewhere. It's right in the nation's capital, right where the FAA is based, where the DOT is based. So there's no doubt that there's going to be a quick investigation, and they'll figure out what happened and close that possibility for the future. You know, just my hearts go out to all those, the American Airlines crew, to the service men or women that were on that flight, plus of course the passengers, particularly the figure skating team, and just enormous tragedy. And when you have a flight like that going to DC, you know that there's going to be somebody on there, but it doesn't matter. I mean, obviously every soul is important.
Have you heard from your staff about how they're feeling?
Yeah, I sent out a communication to our team, and just as a reminder to be safe every day, and that it's our number one value. We preach it every single day, every single meeting. We talk about safety. So, and like I said, we've got a lot of. If you're in your 30s, you probably have never gone through this before. Maybe even in your 40s, you've never experienced something like this, because it's been a really long time. So, which shows how really safe air travel is in the United States. It's incredibly safe, and it's probably the safest mode of transportation in the history of the world. I would assume. So let's recognize that, but also recognize that there was a vulnerability that needs to be addressed. So,
moving on to other industry topics, I was very excited to talk to you. You are really kind of a legend and a pioneer in the aviation industry. You in many ways helped develop and build the low-cost carrier model as it exists today between JetBlue, between Azul. I think you had some stints at Southwest, if I'm not mistaken, as well. It seems like the segment that you kind of helped build, at least in the United States, is having some major issues. Like, I look at JetBlue after its earnings report. I look at what's going on with Spirit Airlines. What do you think has gone wrong with the low-cost carrier model in the U.S. as it stands today?
I think it's a couple things. Number one, I think the big guys got better, and they figured things out, and they have so much market power, and they have so many advantages over the low-cost guys that they use those advantages to their benefit, and they created basically an array of products that addressed all of the areas that they were losing out on. You get on a United Max 9, and it's a beautiful airplane. It's got 24 first class seats. It has a section of extra legroom seats. It has some basic economy seats. Everybody has a TV. Everybody has Wi-Fi. It's a great product. And so, if somebody says, I want to go first class, got you covered. I don't want to pay for anything. I just want to buy a ticket, and I want some extra legroom. Got you covered. I want the cheapest fare humanly possible. I don't want to bring anything on but my backpack under my seat, but I just want the cheapest fare. Got you covered. So, they basically tailor-made a product to be able to kind of hammer the low-cost carriers. And the low-cost carriers, particularly the ULCCs, they thought, well, I'm just going to keep putting more and more seats on an airplane and just lowering my costs, and these guys can never offer what we can offer. And United said, well, hold on for a second, because if I go to a bigger airplane and those incremental 30 seats I get on that airplane, I have those cheaper than you have your 240 seats. And I can give people, I've got my brand name, I've got a better experience, I have my frequent flyer program, I have my credit card, I have all that stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, incrementally, they actually have cheaper seats than the ULCCs. And then the ULCCs kind of back themselves into a corner a little bit, because with all of these seats, 240 seats, like, where can we fly these monstrous airplanes? What markets can we actually fill 240 seats on? And what happened in Spirit's case, 90% of their routes, they had overlap from other airlines. And a lot of them were the majors, because these guys were flying out of their hubs. So they just, the opportunity window became smaller and smaller as the plane got bigger and bigger. And so that's the challenge that they're facing today. And I think, there are a couple ways out, and there are a couple ways that they can continue to not only survive, but, hopefully thrive into the future, because obviously I think the country needs ULCC needs options. But that's really what happened, is that the ULCCs, or the low-cost carriers, didn't offer as many product offerings, and now they're running to put first-class seats in their airplanes, and that's pretty tough to do. for a lot of reasons, because of the brand and because of just the logistics of getting the seats and putting them in. And then, it's tough to recover from that.
So it strikes me that that's a problem that you can't necessarily merge your way out of, right? So Frontier is trying to buy Spirit, but if your diagnosis of the issue is correct, I don't know that Frontier acquiring Spirit solves that problem.
It does from a couple of perspectives. Number one, it eliminates competition. Because if they're flying a route with a major hub carrier and they're both battling in that route and they both have 2 flights a day or whatever, and then all of a sudden half of that goes away, I think it's easier to survive because it's not so much on the radar. And then obviously there's synergies. Last time I checked, Spirit and Frontier have about 50% overlap with each other. So by eliminating that competition and then being able to kind of combine station operations in those cities to save that money, plus headquarters, all of that, I think that's the best way for them both to thrive, is to get together. But obviously there's a negotiation going on right now where, I think Frontier's driving a pretty hard bargain with the creditors, the bondholders, which are the new shareholders of Spirit.
So would Breeze buy Spirit, or are you happy to have that competition?
No, I'm totally happy. No, I don't want to be. I don't want to be a 90%. We're 86% without competition, and that's one of the reasons that we're now profitable. I don't want to be in that business. No way. I want to be kind of in unique markets and be the only nonstop carrier, and we have a product offering just like the MAX 9. We have first class. We have extra legroom seats. We have kind of a basic economy section, and then we offer free Wi-Fi if you buy certain things. So I feel great about our product offering. I feel great about our market position, and I think there's tons of room to grow in the segment that we're in. So no interest in that.
So JetBlue, kind of famously got blocked. What do you think about the regulators? Do you agree with them that the airline industry is too consolidated?
In the specific case of JetBlue, and obviously I have a really soft spot in my heart for JetBlue because I'm the founder. So I think there was a moment in time where everybody really thought, wow, there's a plane shortage, there's a pilot shortage, there's a everything shortage. And I think JetBlue's thinking, it was, hey, we need planes and pilots, and this is the cheapest way to get them. And then obviously they are in Fort Lauderdale. They're in a lot of our markets, so that would help to get rid of that. So it takes a while to get approval, but during that approval process, the whole world changed. And, all the things started happening that I described about the big guys, and all of a sudden it was like, man, if this merger goes through, JetBlue's going to probably be in bankruptcy along with Spirit because of the amount of money they had bid to buy Spirit for. So it was really fortuitous. I mean, I don't like regulators interfering, but in JetBlue's case, it was really good. Let's just be frank about it. It's absolutely was the best thing for JetBlue. So as far as now in this new environment we have today, market concentration, United and Delta are just putting the hammer down. They're growing. They're enormous amounts of credit card revenue, big international networks that are doing great, wind in the sails like never before. And, is that good that these guys are the only 2 airlines in the world? No, obviously unique competition. And so, should United buy JetBlue? Is that something that make a lot of sense for them? But is that good for the country? But if that's JetBlue's way to survive long term, and you have all those jobs and all that air service, you can argue both sides of that. So, I'm a little torn. I think the Alaska Hawaiian thing was great for Hawaiian, and it was great for the state of Hawaii because otherwise Hawaiian Airlines could have gone out of business. And I think the state of Hawaii needs Hawaiian. So I think that was good, and that was done under the Biden administration. So Spirit and Frontier probably needs to happen to save both those guys.
Speaking of administrations, what do you think? Do you think there's going to be any market change under the Trump administration as regulation goes?
I think it's going to be a little, not quite as, I really think that the Justice Department under the Biden administration, they were absolutely scared to death that Spirit was going to go out of business. That would have been really bad. I'm sure they were like calling and saying, what can we do to help this situation? So kind of like you stop the merger and then they go out of business. It's like, oh, we want to preserve ULCC and then they go out of business. That, it doesn't look good. And that, like I said, it was fortuitous for JetBlue. So I think obviously there'll be less involvement. I think the Biden justice said no mergers. They were letting oil patch mergers go through and all this stuff go through. There was tens of billions of dollars and didn't say a word about it, but they just had a thing for the airline business because it was a consumer-facing business. So, yeah, I think it'll be more, but there's just not that many players. Only 9 kind of major airlines, in the country. So there's not really that many possibilities, and I think there's probably a couple, obviously, that would be somewhat concerning, and others that may make sense. So it just depends on which ones.
And can I ask, because you're talking about just one more follow-up on this point about United and Delta hammering the LCCs and ULCCs. They seem to have like limitless premium demand. Like they seem to be talking about, Delta's always talking about its premium cabin and its first class cabin and the premium economy cabin.
And long lines at their clubs.
Yeah,
long lines to get, yeah.
I kind of keep thinking the bottom's going to fall out. Like, how much more can people afford to keep upgrading to premium economy or upgrading to the club membership? But do you think that can continue?
I think so. Delta's got a great product. People want to fly Delta. They feel comfortable on Delta and they like it and they gravitate to it. And as long as they have a great product and they have free Wi-Fi and TVs in every seat and people have a great experience flying them and their flight doesn't get canceled and that's on time, then, they'll keep attracting business. So, yeah, I think there is certainly a market segment and it hasn't been exploited as much maybe as it should have been. There's just not enough first class seats to take care of all that business. So now you have the economy plus and the planes will get bigger. At some point in time, this MAX 10 is going to get approved. And the 321s are coming out like crazy. And, if Spirit somehow doesn't make it, I'm sure Delta and United will line up to get all their 321s and reconfigure them and go bigger and bigger and bigger. So, I think it's segmentation is kind of the way to go, and I don't see it stopping. You kind of wonder how many $10,000 business class seats you get in a business class section. Who can afford $10,000 to fly to Europe? But there seems to be lots of those too.
I also wonder how many of those folks are there on points, though. I do think that a little bit.
Well, especially to Hawaii, I'm sure the whole plane's full of points. Yeah, that was Hawaiian's challenge. They were competing against points, and they were just trying to get cash. You can't with point redemptions. You can't make payroll or buy fuel.
Yeah, you can't pay your pilots with points.
Yeah.
So let's get a bit into the nitty-gritty of sustainability. So, flying very famously has come under fire for its carbon footprint, and SAF, and for all of you non-AV geeks out there, that sustainable aviation fuel is often like set up as the panacea or the cornerstone of the aviation industry's decarbonization efforts. You've been kind of an outspoken critic, David, of SAF. Why don't you like it? What is your?
It's not that I don't like it.
Why do you hate it? Yeah, why do you hate it? There you go.
Because it makes no sense. It's like stupid. It's like window dressing. It's a bunch of politicians sitting around thinking, what can we do to come up with something really to try and address this issue? And then when it gets down to the nitty gritty, makes zero sense whatsoever. It creates more harm than good. It causes people to lose their jobs. It increases the cost of travel. It's kind of like one step forward, one step back. You don't really gain anything. You disrupt the food supply. It's absolutely insanity from every end of it. And, I think it's just going to go away. I don't think it's going to take any. I mean, even Europe's kind of waking up to the fact that when your utility bill doubles and triples and you're in Germany and all the nuclear power plants have been shut down and you can't get cheap natural gas from Russia, a lot of the green parties are being voted out. This is a point in time that we're going to look back at and laugh at and say, how could we be so stupid?
So what do you make of like an airline, like just to name names? I think Air France KLM has committed to like 20% SAF, and SAF is incredibly expensive. That's a huge commitment. Like, are they going to regret that public? How do they backtrack from that, or are they going to just go ahead? What do you think?
They're not going to go ahead. They're going to go out of business if they go ahead. So it's like a CEO saying today in 2025, we're going to be carbon neutral in 2050. Not one of those guys are ever going to be on the job in 2050. It's kind of just cool to say, cheap to say. You're just going to say it, and you can do a little bit of window dressing behind it. But none of those guys. Scott Kirby's not going to be running United in 2050 for sure. So, it's like anything else. The pendulum swings one way and then it has to come back the other way, and it's on its way back. And this is something. If we could have gone to the ocean and got algae and converted algae to jet fuel, and it was cheap and plentiful, and it actually helped the environment, and it was a win-win, great. But unfortunately, that didn't pan out. It wasn't possible to be able to do that. So there are things we can do.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's the answer?
Well, I'm sitting here in my Tesla, and I love my Tesla, and great price for the car. I love not getting the oil changed. I love the fact that I can not have to pull into a gas station and fill it up. And it makes total sense. I don't need to force it. You aren't selling me a $150,000 car when I could get a $60,000 car. I'm getting one for $60 that drives better, drives itself, has all these advantages. But it costs. What do you do with the batteries when they wear out, and how were these manufactured? What's the carbon footprint of this? Everything has a story, and electric cars are not the panacea, because we're talking about doubling the power for AI. At the same time, we're trying to go all electric cars, and then nobody wants to have nuclear. It's like, doesn't make any sense. It's all ludicrous. But when you have economic sense, when it makes sense economically, when there's win-win situations where you can actually have a Tesla and not have to go to the gas station and what I'm really focused on, what I think would be great, and I think this electric car thing's kind of swinging back the other way. My wife has an Audi e-tron, and the value of that car went from $80,000 down to $30,000 in 2 years. It's like nobody wants to drive one of those cars because they have range anxiety. The battery dies a lot quicker than what it used to be, and it's fine for going around town, but you can't go on a road trip, you can't do anything with that car. But I was worried that when you take a cut of barrel of oil, gasoline is obviously the biggest cut, and then diesel is only about 35%. So if we're going to have to do something as an industry, I would rather take that money and subsidize those people that are using distillates. Heating oil, diesel fuel, and jet fuel are all kind of in the same cut. So if we could say, okay, let's take some money and make sure that all the trucks on the road are electric, or let's make sure all the power plants are natural gas instead of anything running on heating oil. Let's get rid of that so that we don't have to fight over the distillate slice. Because what I worry about is if the gasoline goes away, then refineries will go out of business, and then our diesel fuel will become really expensive. So that's where the area we should be focused in.
Delta's long-standing diesel refinery plant will suddenly look like a really smart idea if that happens.
Yeah, no, it's been up and down, but now they've done really well with it the last few years when the price of the refining cost was higher. But I really do think the answer is you have these nuclear submarines and you have these nuclear aircraft carriers that can go 20 years on a small nuclear reactor, and you can run, there are 5,000 people on an aircraft carrier. And the amount of energy that thing's using, why can't we put those in cities all over? I'm a big proponent of micro nuclear power. And I think that gives us enough power for AI, gives us enough power to have electric cars, electric trucks, and they might as well do autonomous. Went on a road trip to Jackson Hole in my Suburban because I don't trust I have range anxiety. And I'm looking at these diesel trucks coming at me. It's 65, 70 miles an hour. I'm wondering, is that guy going to fall asleep and come and kill me? But if it was an autonomous truck and it was driving, I wouldn't have to think about that. I know it wouldn't fall asleep and come and kill me. So there's a lot of great things that can happen with AI and autonomous driving and other types of micronuclear power plants along the way to power trucks. We have a long ways to go. There's a lot of cool technology.
Self-driving cars is my new favorite thing to talk about after being in San Francisco and traveling in the Waymos.
Have either of you ridden in a Waymo?
Oh my God, yes, absolutely. And it's like I saw the future. It's like holding an iPhone for the first time.
Drivers are so distracted nowadays. Put them in the back and let them play on their phones and let the computer drive people around.
Yeah, I felt so safe. And that was one of the first things I really thought about. I'm like, wow, if everybody was in a self-driving car, there wouldn't be any accidents at all.
You know what? None.
Yeah.
What about pilotless planes? Is that the future?
Well, you think about, just starting with the military for a second. We saw an F-35. I don't know if you saw that. I think it was yesterday, the day before. The F-35. I don't know how many hundreds of millions that airplane is. The pilot, thankfully, was able to eject safely. But if you can, starting with military application, if you don't have to put lives in danger on board an aircraft and the aircraft can do everything piloted from the ground, then why would you ever put someone in an aircraft again? If you can get to that point, and we're quickly arriving to that point. And if you can deploy 150,000 drones, it'd be pretty tough for an Iron Dome to take down that many airplanes at the same time. So, we have to figure out technology to combat that. But I definitely think we're going to autonomous flight in the military side, and then obviously we'll just naturally go over, and maybe starting with maybe a single pilot. Probably not in my career or maybe in my lifetime, but certainly if it's safer, then people will feel comfortable just like you do in a car today.
If you don't mind, going back to the sustainability thing, if I could maybe press you a little bit, because I agree with everything you said, and this is not really an energy or a politics podcast, but for what it's worth for our listeners, I'm a huge proponent of nuclear energy as well. But I think that there really are people out there who say all those things are great, but doesn't the airline industry, the aviation industry, still need to do something? Like, still need to kind of hold themselves accountable in a realistic within your lifetime instead of outside of all of our lifetimes, within our lifetimes. Like, how do you respond to that?
Well, how I respond to that is that our customers, those that pay the ticket, have no interest in it. At Azul, we say, hey, do you want to spend another $10 a ticket and we'll go plant a bunch of trees in the Amazon for you? And nobody does it. It's like you have a zero take rate. If it was so dang important to anyone but a politician, then people would be lining up to plant trees in the Amazon forest. If I said to them, look, I was with Willie Walsh on a panel, and I thought, I'm in some kind of, and I had the CEO of KLM sitting right next to me, and he was going on and on about how when we go 100% SAF, it's going to be $167 billion a year extra, and the industry makes $20 billion a year. I'm like, am I in crazy house here or something? Is this like basic math? I just looked in the audience. I said, all of you are going to be out of a job. None of you are going to have a job. If that's what makes you feel good, we can offset this by doing things that are a lot less expensive than this nuttiness of SAF. And how many people will starve to death if we spend 167 billion growing sorghum or whatever they want to do to make this stuff? It's absolutely complete insanity. And so, yeah, if the people wanted it, if it was something, okay, we're all going to boycott flying. No one's going to fly anymore unless you do it. Then there may, something you could do to kind of like make them feel better about it and say, okay, let's go plant trees together. But there's zero appetite for it amongst the traveling public. And, it's like, I was reading an article about when the Arctic loses its ice cap and all of the exploration is going to happen up there and the routes that are going to be happening. Switzerland now is, during certain times of the year, is better climate. Yeah, it's not all bad. Obviously, all the hysteria about Florida going underwater hasn't really materialized that much. Water goes up half an inch or something. It doesn't really change that much. It seems like the politicians, if it's not the ozone layer, if it's not global warming, now climate change, they always have something they have to be scaring people about, it seems like. But humans are great at adaptation.
So I take it you don't feel threatened by train travel as an alternative to flying.
Hyperlink, I love that idea. Look, I'm all about logistics and transportation. And I turned 65 last year, and I want what's best, really. And I wouldn't knowingly fight. If there was a hyperlink way to get from LA to New York in 15 minutes, bring it on. It's kind of evolution. That's the way it goes. But in the meantime, we'll just keep flying with our jet engines.
All right, so let's close it out with a kind of a happy thought, a happy question. So you have, like as Seth said, you've been kind of a pioneer in the aviation, JetBlue, Azul, now Breeze. What is left to be innovated with Breeze, and what are you the most proud of achieving with your company now?
I love creating something from zero, from scratch, and bringing a group of people together and building a company that will do $1 billion in revenue this year, and knock on wood, will be profitable, and to bring air transportation to markets that haven't had it and create great jobs for people where they love coming to work. That's just where I get my thrills. And so, I think just continuing that, I'm really proud of that. You love our team members. They do a great job every day. We're not perfect. We want to be perfect, and we're working towards trying to be as perfect as humanly possible. And if not, we want perfect communication with our guests and let them know what's going on. I think the future is just more using technology, AI, to better know our guests, to be able to offer them things that they really want, to be able to go with more of a super app that has all kinds of things integrated in that make it even more fun and motivating to travel and to do things, to be able to kind of incorporate concerts and special hotel deals and special upgrades and all that kind of stuff into more of a super app. And then using AI to become more reliable, our aircraft, to be more predictive on our maintenance and be safer than we already are. So I think, there's a lot of things that AI is going to change a lot, and I'm looking forward to that, and we're trying to kind of be as much of a leader as we can in that area.
Well, I think we're coming up on time. We would love to have you back on for the AI podcast episode, David, if you would be game for that.
Sure. Time.
But this has been a really wonderful conversation. I just want to really thank you again for joining us, having this really broad range of conversation about the future of aviation and what's going right and what's going wrong and where we're headed. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for the invitation. Anytime.
Thank you again for listening to this very special episode of the Skift Travel Podcast. We'd like to thank David Neeleman once again for joining us at this very uncertain time for the aviation industry. To be honest, he was well within his right to cancel on us given the timing of this episode, and we really sincerely thank him for coming on and sharing his candid thoughts with us. Our condolences, our thoughts are with the families of the passengers of American Eagle Flight 5342. Thank you.